People have lived on the high ground near the village of Haddenham in East Cambridgeshire since the Bronze Age. Saxon graves have been found here, and today the village has a population of over 3,300 people. As is common in East Anglia, there is a shortage of homes. Endurance Estates are proposing a carefully designed scheme of about 34 homes on the land occupied by the old nursery on Chewells Lane. The proposal is in line with District Council policy.
East Cambridgeshire District Council has produced a draft local plan, and the draft local plan already allocates this site for housing development, approximately 40 dwellings. The site is one of 3 that the council have proposed within Haddenham.
One of the first steps in the development process is for archaeologists to excavate the land to establish whether there are any further ancient graves or artefacts buried here.
Hi Dan.
Hi Tom.
Hey.
These on this.
Oh, excellent. That's really nice. So this is a large circular loom weight, probably early Saxon, so I would say so 6th century, something like that, made of fired clay. It's a really big one, so it's a good example.
And we have a cattle jawbone here, which is out of the same pits.
Yeah, I have the same feature
Okay,
here.
fantastic. So that's evidence of what, mixed farming on the site. So there were going to be cows, there's probably other types of animals on the site. Might be evidence of feasting, things like that. What we were expecting on the site was potentially some Saxon inhumation burials and potentially a cemetery, because we have evidence of that about 100 metres away. But actually what we've got here is evidence of Bronze Age, Iron Age, farming techniques and also Saxon textile production, which is really exciting. It might be evidence that there's a Saxon settlement nearby, but it isn't on this site.
The dig has revealed some interesting finds, and further excavations will take place before the development begins. Just as important as the history of the area is the present and future, and so Endurance Estates held a public exhibition to garner the views of current residents of Haddenham about the proposed development. One concern raised was about additional traffic that would be generated by the development. Haddenham already experiences traffic at peak times that can queue on the A1123 approaching the junction with the High Street in the centre of the village. However, traffic assessments have concluded that most commuting drivers from the new development emerging from or entering Chewells Lane would use the eastbound A1123 towards the A10 and Cambridge, and so would not significantly increase the traffic at the junction. The developers are, however, proposing to make improvements to Chewells Lane itself, which already serves the social club and cemetery. Traffic consultant Nigel Pettit has designed the improvements.
So as part of any proposed development, we undertake a site visit where we measure the existing dimensions of Chewells Lane, specifically the footway width, verge width and the carriageway width. At the southern end of Chewells Lane, we've noted that the carriageway is 5.5 metres and there's a 1.6 metre footway. What we're proposing to do is extend that all the way up to the site boundary. From the site boundary, we're proposing to put in a 2 metre wide footway.
Although the new development will generate a negligible amount of extra traffic, Endurance Estates are proposing to both widen the road and extend the footway up to the far end of Chewells Lane. This will be of benefit to both users of the allotments and visitors to the cemetery. A survey of the local ecology has concluded there will be no ecological impacts from the development. A heritage study has also been conducted to assess if the new development will have any effect on Haddenham's conservation area.
Remnants of this church date from the 12th century with possibly earlier origins. So the Church of the Holy Trinity, it lies within the Haddenham Conservation Area, and this was designated in 1972. There are a number of listed buildings in addition to the Church of Holy Trinity within Haddenham Conservation Area, and quite a few of them lie along Station Road.
Studies have shown that the proposed development in Chewells Lane will not affect Haddenham's conservation area. In addition, landscape architects have been commissioned to assess what, if any, visual impact the new houses might have on the area as a whole.
So as part of our assessment process, we would undertake a site visit, which essentially means going to site, having a walk around, getting a feel for literally the lie of the land and how built form and landscape interact, how the fabric of the landscape, essentially things like trees and hedges, combines to give it that sense of place of this is Haddenham as opposed to somewhere else. We'd also look at views and the visual amenity of an area, so where can you see the site from, where are views from the site to, and how important are those views in terms of the things that you're seeing in the composition of that view. Our analysis has found the site is relatively well contained. In terms of local views, there's a lot of localised vegetation that serves to screen views both from the immediate locality but also to the north, east and west as well.
Endurance Estates have also commissioned flood and drainage consultants to assess the suitability of the site. Ursus Zodabay is from Peter Brett Associates.
So as part of the flood risk and drainage assessment, we do a site walkover where we assess any existing drainage features, so if there are any existing ditches or sewers on the site. If there are existing sewers, we try to use them and reuse them for the new development. On this site, however, everything is draining directly into the ground, so it's all infiltrating, which gives us a good idea that infiltration is suitable for the site. The site is slightly elevated compared to surrounding areas, and that's far away from the floodplain, so there's not at risk of flooding from any source, such as rivers or surface water. It's underlain by sand, so it will infiltrate naturally into the ground. So we have done some soak-away testing, and from that we can calculate the soil infiltration rate, which we then use for our drainage design. The foul drainage, however, is going to a new foul sewer, which will be discharging to a foul pumping station, which will be pumped up to the existing sewer in that direction. Anglian Water has confirmed that there is capacity within their network, so the site can drain to the existing sewer network without any problems.
The studies of the site are all passed on to the architects of the scheme itself. So how do they see the project?
There's a need for housing that's been identified in Haddenham, so this will contribute to that. We're looking at about 34 houses, mixed sizes, a number of two-bed apartments, semi or detached houses, good family houses, and then a couple of larger houses as well. But with generous gardens, not overlooking each other, good off-street parking provisions, and access to the play areas and open spaces. It's relatively low density, absolutely appropriate to its position in Haddenham. The houses will all be, and apartments will no more than 2-storey, so they'll have a ground floor and a first floor and no accommodation above that. I think the site, with these lovely green spaces in the centre and the views out beyond, I think it'll be a very attractive place to live, a very natural development extending out from Haddenham.
Endurance Estates have listened carefully to the residents of Haddenham. It is natural for there to be some concerns, but this high-quality scheme offers much-needed new housing, including affordable homes, plus new public open spaces and considerable improvements to Chewells Lane. So are the local residents convinced?
The fact that we've got, shop, pubs, societies in the village, you do need a thriving community, and I think Haddenham could probably take a certain amount of expansion.
Really, I'm positive. I'm happy for the village to grow a bit. I don't want it to become a city.
I think it's a good development. I think it's in a good position where it is, because it's not far from the schools, it's not far from the centre of the village. So I'd be supporting it.
We're fortunate that we've got a number of shops in Haddenham, and of course it's very difficult for villagers to keep shops, and therefore it's important that we have people living here who use the local shops.
If you've got children that live in the village, it's nice that they can carry on living in the village close to the mum, which is what my granddaughter's doing.
There's a desperate need for housing. House prices are much too high, really. They're too high for particularly for youngsters. So I'm very pleased that the scheme says 30% affordable housing. All schools tend to be a bit full up. In fact, I think we are able to take some more children, and we need to have enough children for the school. Developments like this will also make a contribution towards the local economy, and with the SEAL money it will also make a contribution directly to the parish council to enable them to provide better facilities.